In this video, we will see how to find a minimum number in an array. In the previous video, you learned how to find a maximum number in an array using for loop, where the element was comparing to the next element to find the maximum. Now, we will use the same technique, find the minimum element, where the element must be less. Right? So, in this array, I can tell that 10 is the minimum. 10 is the minimum number from the array. So, what I'll do, I'll start my iteration with 67. So, 67 will check with 34, right? So, out of 67 and 34, the smallest element what we found was 34, right? Now, what we'll do, this is the smallest element what we have found. Now, 34 is checking with 89. But since 34 is the smallest, now it will move on to the next iteration where 34 is checking with 23. So, now 23 would remain as the smallest, not 34. So, 23 would check with 10. Now is 23 less than 10? No, the condition is false. The condition is false. So the less element is 10. Or else even you can even do as 10 less than 23. Like here you can write as two conditions. Either this number must be less than this particular value or this value must be greater than the number. Anything works for you. Right? Now it will check for the condition where 10 is less than 87 or 87 greater than 10. So this condition is true since 10 is the smallest. Now 10 is less than 54. The condition is true. Similarly, 10 is smallest. Now 10 is greater than 30. The condition is false. So 10 remains the smallest, and finally I will print 10 in my output. Let us create a minimum called as a minimum where the iteration begins with the first element, where the first element is indicated by the index 0. So, marks of 0. Right? So, for int mark. Right? Let us create and we'll take the array marks where it will iterate through every element within this and it will store in mark. Right? So, what is the condition we use? If this element, that is mark, if this element mark is less than the value, if this element mark is less than the minimum value, right? Minimum would keep on updating. In such case, I will assign minimum value as a mark. Minimum value equals to mark, right? Then I will close and finally I will print the value of minimum. Now let us see the tracing of this. Now what happens? The iteration begins with the first element in the array where minimum would get assigned as the first element. What is the first element we have? 67, right? Because it is pointing at 0th position. So 67 is the first element, right? So marks. Now we'll start looping for marks, right? So marks will iterate via all the element beginning with the first element. So it will iterate with the first element itself. It will check for both the condition. Mark is less than 67, then I'll assign the value to the minimum. But since it is not less than, so since the condition is false, the mark would move on to the next element in the array, that is 34, right? Now the value of mark is not 67 but it is 34. But the minimum value remains same. Right? Now it will check for this condition where mark is less than minimum. 34 less than 67, the condition is true. Because value stored in mark is 34. 34 less than 67, the condition is true. Now I will assign the value of mark to minimum. Right? So what is the latest value of minimum we have? It is 34. Right? It is 34. Earlier it was 67. Now it is 34. Now mark would move on to the next iteration, that is 89. So the latest value of mark what we have is 89. Now it will check for the condition. What is the condition? If mark, that is 89, if it is less than 34, then I will assign it. But since the condition is false, 89 is not less than 34, it will move on to the next value and the value of minimum remains as it is. After 89, what we have in the array, it is 23, right? Now, the value of mark is 23. It will check if 23 is less than 34. The condition is true. 23 is less than 34. So the value of minimum would remain as 23. It will assign the value of minimum mark. That is 23. Now the latest value in minimum is 23. Right? Now it will move on. The latest value of minimum is 23. Now it will move on to the next iteration, that is where mark is 10. Now it will again check for the condition. If the value of mark, that is 10, less than 23, the condition is true. So mark would get updated again where it would be 10. Right? Now moving on to the next iteration where mark would be pointing towards 87. Right? So the value of mark is 87. Now it will check for the condition where the value of mark 87 less than 10. Since both the condition are false, so the value remains same and the next iteration is 54. Right? From the array, the next iteration is 54. It will again check for the condition where 54 is less than 10, the condition is false. So if condition is false, all the statement gets skipped. All this statement gets skipped and again it will move back to iterate in the next variable of the array. So the next variable of the array what we have is 30. Right? Now it will check with the condition. The value of mark is 30. Is 30 less than 10? The condition is false. So now the condition is false. Now we have reached to the end of the array. Since the for loop has reached the end of the array, like it has no elements to compare. In such case, it would come out of the array and it would print the minimum value. Finally, the minimum value stored in the variable is 10. Right? It is 10. Right? Now let us see this in the editor. Yes. This is the program this is a program to find a minimum number in an array. Here, this loop is iterating through every element and every element is stored in the variable called as a mark. Always make sure to use a data type. Without using, if you try to declare it, then it will throw you an error. Right? Next, it is checking for every condition where this particular value or the first iteration value, whatever we get, that must be less than to the next value. If it is less than, then for sure the first iterated value would be the minimum. So that would be assigned over here. Take a pen and paper and start tracing the program with all these simple logics. Then you will understand like how to write a program, how to build a logic for every program. It is not like just in a single attempt you will be able to write a huge program. No, that is totally wrong. Initially, you have to always begin with the small programs and try to create a logic on your own. Even though if it is wrong or even if it is right, you will learn how to write. You will get to know how the logic gets created behind this program. Then you have to use the programming keywords or the programming syntax to frame a proper program. Initially, you feel it difficult by seeing how to write a logic, but a frequent practice will definitely help you to be a good programmer. Now, let us run this. Yes, here if you see the minimum value is 10. Now, let me alter it by adding the least number, that is 5. Now, let us run it again. Yes, the minimum is 5. It means that the logic whatever I have written here is working for any type of element. Right? Let me add a highest number as well. It is 5. Let me add a negative number. Yes, even it worked for a negative number. Right? So whatever logic you are writing, make sure that logic works for all the type of input, even it may be a positive or a negative input. So this is how you write a program to find a minimum number in an array. In the next video, we will come up with few more programs like this. Till then, keep building logic for few of the sample programs like which I have taught earlier, so that you can increase your logical skills. Thank you.